This is J'Ba Fofi, a giant spider cryptid that is said to dwell deep within the Congolese forest.
The J'Ba Fofi was always considered a legend told around campfires until a lab in Europe ran a DNA sequence that stopped the hearts of every scientist in the room.
What if J'Ba Fofi was actually a moderately big tarantula, like a yet undiscovered but plausible species?
This genetic anomaly proves that a massive predator from the ancient world is very much alive in the Congo rainforest. The DNA isn't just a match for an extinct species. It shows active mutations for strategic hunting and social coordination. Basically, we are looking at a giant intelligent spider that has been hiding from humanity for ages. What they found in that genetic code suggests the hunt has only just begun. The genetic blueprint of a living nightmare. The discovery started in early 2023, when a specialized field team moved into the deepest parts of the Congo rainforest. They were working with local guides who knew the land better than any map. These guides led them to a region that the indigenous Baka people refused to enter after the sun went down. In this area, the trees are massive, and the canopy is so thick that almost no light reaches the ground. The air is heavy and damp, and the smell of rot is everywhere. This is where the team found the first pieces of evidence. They discovered thick white silk strands hanging between trees that looked like they belonged in a horror movie. These weren't normal spider webs that you find in your basement. These strands were as thick as a thumb and felt like nylon ropes. Dr. Elise Brenner from the Max Planck Institute was the lead researcher on the project. When she first saw the samples, she thought they were a prank or some kind of synthetic rope left behind by hunters. But when she touched the material, she realized it was organic. She carefully collected the fragments and took them back to her lab for testing. The results of the silk analysis alone were enough to make her drop her equipment in shock. The protein chains in the silk were reinforced with minerals absorbed from the soil. This created a material that was literally stronger than steel and more elastic than anything humans have ever manufactured in a factory. This was only the beginning of the anomaly. She knew she had to look deeper into the genetic makeup of the silk. She managed to extract enough cellular material from the residue stuck to the strands to run a full DNA sequence. She ran the test 3 times because she simply didn't believe the screen. She even called her colleague at 3 in the morning with her hands shaking. She was convinced that the machines had failed or that the samples were contaminated. But the data was clear. The DNA contained genetic markers from the Arthropleura lineage. If you aren't a bug expert, that might not sound scary, but it should. These were creatures from the Carboniferous period. This was a time 300 million years ago, when the Earth had much higher oxygen levels. Back then, bugs grew to massive sizes because they could breathe more easily. We are talking about millipedes longer than a car and spiders with leg spans of several feet. Every textbook in the world says these giants went extinct hundreds of millions of years ago. But here was active DNA sitting on a lab bench in 2023. The DNA wasn't fossilized or old. It was vibrant and moving. It was active. And that's putting it lightly. What really disturbed the team was how this DNA had adapted. Normally, a giant spider from that era couldn't survive today because there isn't enough oxygen to support such a large body. But the genetic anomaly showed that this creature had mutated. Dr. Brenner found modifications in the respiratory system of the creature. It had evolved a way to process air that allowed it to bypass the normal size limits for bugs. It was a blueprint for a biological impossibility. It was like seeing a dragon in a modern city. The code showed that this predator had been slowly changing and perfecting itself in the dark corners of the Congo for millions of years. It wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And get this, the neural pathway genes were highly developed. This wasn't just a big dumb bug. These sequences are usually associated with problem solving and pattern recognition. It suggested the spider was capable of thinking and planning its moves. This was the moment the researchers realized they weren't just looking at a new species. They were looking at an apex predator that was smarter than any spider should be. The data was telling a story of a monster that was just getting started with its new evolution. Something big was hiding in those woods, and the genetics were just the first clue. The secret language of the forbidden zones. While the scientists in Europe were staring at screens, the people living in the Congo Basin already knew the truth. The Baka and Mbuti communities have lived alongside these creatures for thousands of years. They don't call them legends or myths. To them, the J'Ba Fofi is just another part of the forest that you have to respect if you want to keep your life. They have very specific rules for how to behave in the territories where the giant spiders live. One of the most important rules is about vibration. The local elders explain that you must never speak the name of the spider after the sun goes down. Most outsiders think this is just a silly superstition, but it's actually a survival strategy. The giant spiders don't see very well in the dark. Instead, they have extremely sensitive hairs on their legs that can pick up the tiniest movements. Human voices create vibrations that travel through the humid air and the soft soil. Speaking in the darkness is basically like sending a dinner invitation to a predator that can feel you from a mile away. The DNA results actually confirm this. The geneticists found extraordinary development in the mechanoreceptor genes. This means the spider has a level of sensitivity to vibrations that is almost supernatural. The Baka people also watch the forest for signs of silence. A healthy rainforest is usually very loud. You have birds screaming and monkeys fighting and insects buzzing all day long. But when a giant spider moves into an area, everything goes quiet. The smaller animals know to stop moving and stop making noise to avoid being seen. When a hunter walks into a part of the woods that is totally silent, they know it is time to turn around immediately. Silence in the Congo isn't peaceful. It is a warning that a massive predator is nearby, and it is watching. The locals also leave offerings of meat near certain old trees. They aren't worshiping the spider like a god. They are negotiating with it. By giving the spider an easy meal of forest hog or antelope meat, they hope the creature won't feel the need to hunt humans. It is a terrifying way to live, but it has worked for them for generations. However, when outsiders come in and ignore these rules, people start to vanish. The elders have stories of entire hunting parties that went into the forbidden zones and never came back. They found their equipment and their shoes, but the people were just gone. This matches an incredible historical case from 1938. A missionary team was traveling near the Ituri forest when they found a web that blocked their entire path. It was a massive structure that looked like it was made of thick white rope. One of the men touched it with a stick and said he could feel the vibration through the wood. It was under massive tension. That night, 3 members of the team disappeared from their tents. There were no screams and no sounds of a struggle. Their boots were still sitting right next to their beds. It was like they had been lifted straight out of their sleep and carried away. One survivor named Robert Hale said he woke up and saw a huge shadow descending from the trees. He described it as having many legs and moving like a heavy machine. It was totally silent as it worked. He was so traumatized that he never spoke about it again until right before he died. He lived his whole life with every light in his house turned on because he was terrified of what was waiting in the shadows. For years, people called him a liar, but the silk samples his team brought back were recently tested. They matched the same impossible DNA found by Dr. Brenner. Ancient monsters were taking people in the night, and the world was finally getting proof. The science of paralyzing darkness. The genetic anomaly also revealed something terrifying about the way this creature catches its food. In the early 1940s, a Belgian soldier named William Deces was found wandering near the edge of the forest. He was in a state of total mental breakdown, and his legs were completely paralyzed. He couldn't move a muscle for over 10 hours, but he was wide awake the whole time. Doctors found a strange venom in his blood that they had never seen before. It didn't belong to any known snake or spider on the planet. This venom was designed for one specific and horrible purpose. It stops the muscles from moving, but it keeps the brain fully conscious. Think about how scary that is. You can feel everything that is happening to you, but you can't even blink or scream for help. Predators use this kind of venom when they want to keep their meal fresh. Instead of ending the life of the prey immediately, they keep it alive while they slowly consume it. It is a level of cruelty that shows how much this creature has evolved over millions of years. Dr. Brenner's team looked at the genes responsible for this venom. They found that it was a highly sophisticated neurotoxin that the ancient ancestors of the spider didn't have. This means the J'Ba Fofi hasn't just been sitting around. It has been actively developing new chemical weapons to deal with larger prey like humans and large mammals.
The DNA showed that the spider's venom glands have mutated several times in the last few thousand years.
This is a very fast rate of evolution for a species that is supposed to be a living fossil. The Belgian military actually tried to cover up the story of the soldier. They classified his medical records and closed off that section of the jungle for 6 months. They didn't give any explanation to the public, but now we know they were likely dealing with a massive infestation. They realized that there was something in the woods that they couldn't fight with normal guns or soldiers. The soldier Dere spent the rest of his life in a psychiatric hospital because he couldn't stop screaming about the legs in the darkness. This evolution of venom is a huge red flag for scientists. It proves that the J'Ba Fofi is an active participant in the modern world. It isn't just a leftover from the past that is slowly dying out. It is a creature that is getting better at hunting every day.
The DNA also showed that the spider has a purple tint in its markings, which matches the descriptions given by witnesses for decades.
This purple color comes from a specific protein that helps the spider hide in the low light of the forest floor. It is the perfect camouflage for a predator that lives in a world of shadows. The crazy part is that these genetic traits are being passed down to the next generation with even more intensity. The spiders are born with the ability to hunt large animals from the moment they hatch. They don't have to learn how to be monsters. It is written in their code. There was a breeding population in the woods, and it was growing faster than anyone realized. Growing army beneath the ground. Everything changed when an arachnologist named Dr. Thomas Avery decided to go looking for the source of the spiders. He had spent his whole career studying how spiders build their homes, and he knew that a creature this large would need a massive base of operations. He went into the Congo with a local guide who knew where the most dangerous forbidden zones were located. After weeks of searching, they found what they were looking for. They discovered a hole in the ground that was lined with thick white silk. It looked like a tunnel leading deep into the earth. Avery was terrified, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He decided to go down into the hole using ropes and a flashlight. As he went deeper, the temperature began to rise. This was strange because the ground is usually cool in the forest. He realized the heat wasn't coming from the earth. It was coming from the bodies of hundreds of living creatures. When he turned on his flashlight, he almost fell off his rope. The walls and the ceiling were covered in silk sacks the size of pumpkins. These were egg sacs, and many of them had already opened. Thousands of smaller spiders were crawling over every surface. These little ones were already the size of dinner plates. They weren't fighting each other like normal spiders do. Instead, they were moving in organized patterns like a colony of ants. They were working together to guard the nest. Avery saw piles of bones on the floor of the cave. He saw the remains of animals like forest hogs, and even a boot that looked like it belonged to an explorer who went missing 5 years earlier. The spiders weren't just eating. They were sorting the remains into piles. This showed a level of intelligence that was way beyond anything we see in normal bugs. The J'Ba Fofi was building an army beneath the forest floor, and they were preparing to expand their territory. If a monster from 300 million years ago is breeding right under our feet, are we the invaders or the prey? Tell us your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more.